My grandmother didn't suggest kids. She issued an ultimatum at Thanksgiving in front of everyone. Give me great-grandchildren or you're cut off. She called it tradition. She called it family values. I called it blackmail. She believed bloodline was something she owned. She believed money could force obedience. But when the DNA test came back, her authority collapsed. And so did the lie holding our family together. I knew the threat was coming. Not the exact words, not the theatrical timing, but the shape of it. The way Grandma Evelyn could turn a holiday into a tribunal with a smile that said family and eyes that said obedience. Sam squeezed my hand as we pulled into her driveway, and I squeezed back like I could transfer the dread out of my bloodstream and into the steering wheel. Remember, Sam said quiet, we don't have to stay. I nodded, because nodding was easier than admitting the truth out loud. I was 32 years old and still felt 12 when I walked into my grandmother's house. The porch smelled like pine cleaner and cold air. The front door was already cracked open, as if the house was expecting us and not in a good way. Inside, everything looked the same as it always had. Beige walls, family photos arranged like a museum exhibit. Grandma in the center of most of them, smiling, holding babies, standing between couples at weddings like a stamp of approval. The fireplace was going, the TV was muted, football on the screen, men colliding in silence. In the kitchen, my mother was stirring gravy with the tense efficiency of someone defusing a bomb. She turned when she heard us, and her face did that thing it always did around Grandma's house. Bright smile first, tired eyes second. There you are, Mom said too loudly. Hi Sam. Sam leaned in and gave her a hug. I kissed her cheek. She smelled like onions and stress. You okay? I asked. I'm fine, she said immediately, which meant she wasn't. She glanced over my shoulder like she was checking who might be listening. Just try to be patient today. My stomach dropped a half-inch. What did she say? Mom's eyes flicked toward the dining room. Nothing. Not yet. That yet was the sound of a train whistle in the distance. Aunt Carol's voice rang out from the living room. Well, look who finally showed up. The word finally had a hook in it, like we were late, like our attendance was an obligation we'd almost failed at. We weren't even late. We were exactly on time. But in this house, you were always slightly wrong, always slightly behind, always slightly disappointing. Aunt Carol stepped into the doorway with a glass of wine in one hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She kissed me on both cheeks as if we were European aristocracy instead of a family that fought over pie recipes. Hey, Carol, I said. Sam offered a polite hello. Carol's gaze flicked down to my left hand, like she was checking for a ring. I watched her do it. She didn't bother to hide it. Still no jewelry? She asked, tone breezy. Sam's hand tightened around mine, but he didn't say anything. He never said anything first. He let people show themselves. We're happy, I said. Carol nodded like I'd said something childish. Of course you are. Anyway, she's been asking about you. Who? I asked, already knowing. Carol's smile sharpened. Your grandmother. Grandma Evelyn appeared as if summoned by her own name. She came from the hallway, small and perfectly put together. Gray hair pinned neat, earrings, a cardigan that looked soft but somehow authoritative. She carried herself like the house belonged to her, and the people inside it were temporary. My darling, she said, arms opening. The word darling always sounded sweet from anyone else. From Grandma, it sounded like a contract. I hugged her. She smelled like perfume and talcum powder, and something faintly sour underneath, like old resentment kept warm. You look tired, she said into my ear. It wasn't concern. It was an evaluation. I'm fine, I said automatically. She pulled back and looked at me, then at Sam. Her smile widened in a way that told me she was about to say something that would sound like a compliment to strangers, but would land like a slap to me. Sam, she said, still hanging in there. Sam's face stayed neutral. Happy to be here. Grandma laughed like he'd told a joke. We'll see. Mom made a small noise from the kitchen, like a warning bell. I pretended not to hear it. I pretended, as I always did, that if I acted normal enough, the day could be normal. It couldn't. The house filled quickly. My brother Nate arrived with his wife and their toddler little Lily, who wore a tiny orange dress and looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Nate carried a casserole, like an offering. His wife carried Lily and a diaper bag and the exhausted expression of someone who had been awake since 5 a.m. "Hey," Nate said, hugging me with one arm. "You good?" He said it like a reflex, like he knew the answer but needed to ask anyway. "Yeah," I lied. Lily spotted Grandma and reached out immediately, and Grandma's face transformed. The hard edges smoothed, her voice turned soft and musical. "There's my angel," Grandma cooed, taking Lily. "There's my legacy." Legacy. There it was, the word she used like a prayer and a weapon. She bounced Lily on her hip and looked right at me, like she couldn't help herself. "See?" Grandma said. This is what matters." Nate's wife, Kelsey, shot me a sympathetic look. She'd been on the receiving end too, just in a different way. Grandma adored Lily, but she treated Kelsey like a vessel that had fulfilled its purpose. Sam leaned down and murmured, "You hearing this?" "Mm-hmm," I said, staring at the floor. I wasn't going to ruin Thanksgiving. That was always the rule. Don't ruin it. Don't make a scene. Don't be the reason Grandma cries. The rule had been drilled into us like religion. Dinner prep took over the house. People rotated through the kitchen, snatching rolls, stealing olives, offering to help and getting in the way. The air got thick with food and tension. Grandma floated through it all, directing like a general. "Linda, your gravy is too thin." "Carol, stop picking at the stuffing." "Nate, don't let Lily touch that, it's hot." And then, like she was casually discussing the weather, she said to me, "So, any news?" I froze. Sam looked up from where he was setting plates. "What kind of news?" I asked, already knowing. Grandma tilted her head. "Oh, honey, don't play innocent. You're not 20 anymore." Mom's spoon clinked against the pot. "Mom," she warned. Grandma's smile didn't change. "What? It's a family holiday. We're allowed to talk. We're allowed to want things." She looked at me. "Are we going to have something to celebrate soon?" My heart thudded. The room was loud, but in that moment it felt like everything quieted just enough for her to make sure everyone heard. I forced my voice steady. "We're not talking about that." Grandma's eyebrows lifted, like I'd said something outrageous. "Not talking about it?" she repeated, amused. "Linda, did you hear that? We're not allowed to talk about it." Mom's face tightened. "Let's just eat, please." Grandma waved a hand. Fine, we'll eat." But her eyes stayed on me, and there was something in them I didn't like. Not anger, not exactly. Calculation. We sat down at the dining table like we always did, in the same seats like the house arranged us by habit. Grandma at the head, Grandpa's empty chair beside her, still there years after he died, still untouched like grief had become furniture. Mom and Dad on one side, Aunt Carol and her husband on the other. Nate and Kelsey near the end with Lily in a booster seat, me and Sam across from them. Grandma insisted on a prayer. She always did. Her eyes closed tightly, like she was concentrating on being righteous. "Lord," she began, "thank you for family, for blessings, for continuation, for the future." Continuation, future. The words were placed carefully, like she was laying breadcrumbs. I stared at my plate. Sam's hand rested lightly on my knee. When the prayer ended, Grandma opened her eyes and smiled at everyone. "Let's eat," she said, and the room exhaled. For the first 10 minutes, it was almost bearable. People passed dishes. Lily smeared mashed potatoes across her cheek. Dad talked about traffic. Carol complained about gas prices. Nate made a joke about how Thanksgiving was just an excuse to argue about politics. Then Grandma tapped her fork against her glass. The sound cut through the table. Everyone froze, like they'd been trained. Grandma beamed, warm and bright. "I just want to say," she began, "how grateful I am to have everyone here." Mom's shoulders stiffened. I felt the warning come too late, like a door clicking shut behind me. Grandma's gaze traveled the table, lingering on Lily with obvious pride. "My family," she continued. "My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandbaby." She said "my" like she owned us. "And you know," she added, voice light, "when you get to my age, you start thinking about what you leave behind." Dad cleared his throat. Evelyn. Grandma held up a hand without looking at him. No, Mark. Let me speak. Dad went quiet. Of course he did. Grandma looked directly at me. I felt heat rise into my face. I could feel Sam's posture shift, subtle, like he was bracing. Grandma smiled. Sweetheart, she said, you've had your freedom, you've had your fun, and that's nice, but at some point, she paused like she was giving me time to accept what she was about to say. At some point, she repeated, you have to stop being selfish. My stomach clenched. The word selfish hit like a familiar bruise. I opened my mouth, but she kept going, unstoppable. You don't get to just take from the family, she said. You don't get to enjoy the love, the support, the holidays, and then refuse to contribute to the future. Mom's eyes were wide. Kelsey stared down at her plate. Nate looked like he wanted to disappear into the stuffing. I heard myself say quietly, Grandma, stop. Grandma's smile thinned. Stop? She echoed, like the concept was foreign. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. She turned her attention to the whole table, like she was inviting them into the conversation. I've been thinking, she said, about my will. The word will hung in the air. Dad's hand tightened around his fork. Mom's lips parted like she was going to speak. Then she didn't. Grandma continued, voice still calm, still pleasant, like she was discussing a recipe. I've worked hard, she said. I built something. I kept this family together, and I want to know that what I leave behind goes to someone who will carry it forward. My heart pounded. Sam's hand slid from my knee to my hand under the table, gripping. Grandma looked at me again. If you choose not to give me great-grandchildren, she said, then I don't see why you should benefit. A silence so heavy it felt physical settled over the table. Grandma tilted her head, almost sympathetic. So, she said, here's where I stand. Give me grandkids, or you're disinherited. The words were clean, sharp, delivered like a verdict. Mom made a strangled sound. Dad stared at his plate like it had suddenly become interesting. Nate's face went pale. Lily babbled and slapped her hands together, oblivious, and somehow that made it worse, like the universe was mocking us. I felt my throat close, not from tears, from rage so sudden it stole my breath. Grandma watched me, waiting for me to fold, waiting for the obedient version of me to appear and apologize for existing. Sam's voice cut through the silence, calm and steady. Is that a joke? He asked. Grandma's eyes flashed. Excuse me? Sam didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile. You just told her she'll be cut out of the will unless she has children, in front of everyone at Thanksgiving. Grandma's lips tightened. I'm not talking to you, she snapped, and there it was, the mask slipping. The real Grandma, the one who hated being challenged by anyone outside her control. Sam nodded once. Okay, then talk to her like she's a person, not a womb. Carol gasped like he'd cursed in church. Grandma's face went stiff. How dare you, she hissed. I have done nothing but love this family. I could feel everyone looking at me, waiting for me to fix it, waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to make Grandma feel better. The old reflex surged up in my chest. Don't ruin it. Don't make her cry. Don't be the reason. But another feeling rose with it, quieter, colder, and heavier. Something that had been forming for years. A realization that I had been paying for peace with pieces of myself. I swallowed, hands shaking under the table. Grandma, I said, and my voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone braver than me. You don't get to threaten me. Grandma's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected resistance. Oh, she said softly, almost kindly. Honey, it's not a threat, it's a consequence. That word, consequence. Like my body was a decision tree, and she was simply pointing at the branch she preferred. Sam squeezed my hand harder, grounding me. I stared at my grandmother, at the woman who had hugged me at the door and told me I looked tired, like that was love. And I realized I wasn't tired. I was done. I inhaled slowly, feeling my chest shake. You can keep your money, I said. The room went dead silent again. Grandma blinked, as if I'd spoken in a different language. What did you say? She asked, voice sharp. I looked around the table, at my mother's pleading eyes, at my father's avoidance, at my brother's helplessness, at Carol's smugness, at Lily's messy face. Then I looked back at Grandma. I said, I repeated, voice steadier this time, "You can keep your money." Grandma's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her fork. "You're being dramatic," she said, but there was something brittle underneath. Fear, maybe, or anger that her control wasn't working the way it usually did. Mom whispered my name like a prayer. "Please." Sam's chair scraped softly as he shifted closer to me. Grandma leaned forward, voice low. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "And it's not money." Her face tightened like she'd been slapped. And then, like she always did when she couldn't win with logic, she reached for emotion. Her eyes filled instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. "I just want a family," she whispered, voice trembling. "I just want to see my line continue before I die." There it was. The guilt, the death card, the favorite weapon wrapped in a trembling voice. For a second, I felt myself wobble. The old training tugged at me, begging me to back down, begging me to make it okay. But Sam's hand in mine was steady, and the humiliation still burned. I pushed my chair back. "I'm not doing this," I said. Grandma's tears stopped mid-fall, her eyes hardened. "Sit down," she ordered. I stood. "Don't be rude," Mom pleaded, half standing too. Grandma's voice sharpened like a blade. "You will sit back down and apologize." I looked at her, standing at the head of the table like a queen issuing punishment. Then I looked at my mother, the woman who had taught me to swallow pain and call it respect. I looked at my father, who couldn't even look at me. And I realized something else, something small but devastating. They were all waiting to see if I'd comply. Sam stood too. "We're leaving," he said simply. Grandma's face went white. "You are not," she snapped. I grabbed my coat from the chair. "We are," I said, voice shaking but certain. "And if you ever threaten me like that again, you won't see me at all." Grandma's lips curled. "You wouldn't do that." She said it like she believed it, like she believed I belonged to her. I paused, hand on my coat, and for the first time in my life, I saw the moment clearly. This was the fork in the road where I either became myself or stayed her granddaughter forever. I looked her in the eye. "Watch me," I said. And we walked out of Thanksgiving dinner while my family sat in stunned silence, mashed potatoes cooling on plates, and Grandma's legacy narrative cracking like thin ice under a boot. Then I opened the front door and stepped into the cold, and my phone started vibrating before we even reached the car. I didn't answer. Not yet. I knew what was coming, and somehow, deep down, I knew this wasn't the worst part. It was only the beginning. The first voicemail came before we hit the end of the block. I didn't listen to it. I didn't need to. I knew the tone already. Hurt mixed with outrage, confusion carefully shaped into accusation. By the time we got home, my phone had turned into a living thing, buzzing, lighting up, breathing impatience into my pocket. Sam locked the door behind us and leaned his forehead against it for a second. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too fast. "Yeah." He didn't argue. He just took my coat and hung it up like this was any other night, like we hadn't just detonated a family tradition in the middle of turkey and gravy. I dropped onto the couch and stared at my phone while it vibrated itself into exhaustion. Mom, Dad, Nate, Carol, a number I didn't recognize, which I assumed was a cousin I'd never given my number to on purpose. I finally opened Mom's text. "Mom, please call me. You embarrassed her. You embarrassed all of us." I exhaled slowly. There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not that was cruel. Just embarrassment. As if my existence had spilled red wine on the carpet. Sam sat beside me. "You don't have to answer." "I know," I said. "But if I don't, she'll turn this into something else." "She already has," he said gently. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I hit play on Grandma's voicemail. Her voice was shaky, wounded. "I don't understand why you would do this to me," she said. "In my own home, in front of my family. I was only trying to help you see what matters. I didn't raise you to be so cold." The words slid under my skin, familiar and practiced. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, she continued. You've always been independent, but this, walking out, letting that man speak to me like that? That man. I'm very hurt, she finished softly. Very hurt. I hope you come to your senses. The voicemail ended. Sam let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it since dinner. She didn't even apologize. No, I said. She never does. The next few days blurred into a slow, grinding campaign. Mom called every morning. Dad texted in fragments. Nate sent a message that started with, I get where you're coming from, and ended with, but you could have handled it better. Carol didn't contact me directly. She didn't need to. She used Mom like a relay station. She's devastated, Mom said one afternoon, voice tight. She hasn't slept. She keeps asking what she did wrong. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's new. Don't be sarcastic, Mom snapped. She's old. She won't be here forever. There it was again. Mortality is leverage. I'm not having this conversation, I said. She threatened me. She didn't threaten you, Mom said quickly. She was emotional. She's scared. Scared of what? I asked. Me living my life? Mom sighed. You know how important family is to her. I am her family, I said. Apparently not enough. Silence stretched across the line. She just wants to know you care, Mom said finally. Is it really so hard to reassure her? Reassure her. Translate, give her what she wants or lie convincingly. I'm not having a baby to reassure someone, I said, and I'm not apologizing for refusing to be blackmailed. Mom inhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. I hung up. That night, Sam and I sat at the kitchen table, phones face down like landmines. She's not going to let this go, Sam said. I know. She's not upset about the will, he continued. She's upset that it didn't work. I nodded. She's never lost control like that before. Sam studied me. Do you want kids? The question landed gently. No pressure, no agenda. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe, someday, but now, after this, it feels poisoned. Sam reached across the table and laced his fingers through mine. Whatever we decide, it has to be ours. I squeezed back, grateful in a way that made my chest ache. A week later, Grandma made her next move. She didn't call me, she called Mom. Then Mom called me, voice careful, too careful. She wants everyone to do DNA tests, Mom said. I blinked. What? She says it's for medical reasons, Mom rushed on. Family history, genetic risks, she's been reading about it. I stared at the wall, a slow chill creeping up my spine. Why now? Mom hesitated. She says she wants to know what she's passing down. Passing down. Sam, who had been listening from the other side of the room, looked up sharply. And? I asked. And she thinks it might bring everyone back together, Mom finished. Something we can all do as a family. I laughed, bitter. That's not togetherness, that's surveillance. She's trying, Mom insisted. Can't you meet her halfway? Halfway to what, I wondered. Another test? Another hoop? Another demand dressed up as love? Are you doing it? I asked. Yes, Mom said. Your father, too. Nate already agreed. Of course he did. Nate always agreed. Nate always found the path of least resistance and called it peace. And if I say no? I asked. Mom was quiet. I think, she said slowly, that would hurt her even more. There it was. The unspoken threat, refusal equals cruelty. After we hung up, Sam leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. This isn't about health, he said. No, I agreed. It's about proof. Proof of what? That we belong, I said. On her terms. We sat with it for a while. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space. If you do it, Sam said, do it because you want to, not because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. I thought about Grandma's face at the table, the certainty, the entitlement. I'll do it, I said finally. Sam raised an eyebrow. You sure? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. If she wants science, she can have science. The kit arrived in a neat little box a few days later. Grandma sent a group text like she was announcing a birth. Grandma, so glad everyone agreed. This will be good for us. For the future. For the future. I stared at the box on the counter, small and innocuous, plastic vial, instructions, barcodes. I followed the steps, spit into the tube, sealed it, and dropped it in the mail. I felt nothing. No fear, no excitement, just a quiet, creeping sense that something was about to tip. 2 weeks passed. In that time, Grandma softened her tone. She sent me a card, handwritten, carefully worded. I didn't mean to hurt you. I only speak from love. Families say hard things, no apology, no accountability, just reframing. Mom called to tell me Grandma was doing better, that she'd told people she might have gone too far. Might. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was strange, tight, almost shaky. "Are you sitting down?" she asked. "Yes," I said, my pulse quickening. "Your DNA results came in," she said. "Mine?" "Yes, well, everyone's." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "And?" I asked. There was a pause, long enough to hear her breathing. "There's something off," she said. "Off how?" She swallowed. "Your results don't match your grandfather's line." The words didn't register at first. My brain snagged on them like a file error. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," she said carefully, "genetically, your father isn't related to Grandpa." The world tilted. "That's not possible," I said automatically. "I know," Mom whispered. "That's what your grandmother said." A rush of heat flooded my chest. "What else did she say?" Mom hesitated. "She said the test must be wrong." Of course she did. "She wants to do another one," Mom continued. "A different company. She says we can't tell anyone yet." "Tell anyone yet." I closed my eyes. "So," I said slowly, "the woman who threatened to cut me off for not continuing the bloodline doesn't actually know her own." Mom started crying. "She's beside herself," she sobbed. "She doesn't understand. She keeps saying this can't be happening." I leaned back against the wall, phone pressed to my ear, and laughed softly. It wasn't joy, it was disbelief. And underneath it, something else began to surface. Not triumph, not revenge, grief. Because suddenly, the monster at the table wasn't just cruel. She was terrified. And I knew, with a certainty that made my chest ache, that she was going to try to make this my problem. Grandma didn't call me that night. That was how I knew things were bad. When Grandma was hurt, she called. When she was angry, she called. When she wanted control back, she called until the phone became an extension of her will. Silence meant panic. The next morning, Mom texted. "Mom, she wants everyone to come over tonight. Just immediate family. Please don't say no." I stared at the message for a long time. Sam watched my face change. "That's it," he said quietly. "That's the meeting." "Yeah," I said. My mouth felt dry. "That's the reckoning." "Do you want me there?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." When we pulled into Grandma's driveway, the house looked smaller somehow. Less fortress, more stage set. The lights were all on, every room glowing like it was bracing for impact. Inside, the air was heavy, no food smells, no music, just tension hanging thick as dust. Everyone was already there. Mom sat on the couch, hands folded too tightly in her lap. Dad stood near the window, staring out like he was hoping to escape through the glass. Nate leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Kelsey sat beside Mom, Lily absent for once, like even Grandma had known better than to drag a child into this. Aunt Carol was there too, of course, sitting upright, alert, eyes sharp with anticipation masked as concern. And Grandma sat in her chair, not at the head of the table, not commanding the room, just sitting, smaller than I remembered. But when she looked up and saw me, the old spark flashed in her eyes, the instinct to assert, to dominate. "You brought him," she said, voice clipped. I felt Sam tense beside me. "Yes," I said. "I did." Grandma sniffed. "This is family business." "He is my family," I said. The room went still. Mom cleared her throat. "Let's all just sit." We did. No one offered drinks. No one asked how anyone was doing. The pleasantries were gone. All that remained was the bone structure of the family, exposed and fragile. Grandma folded her hands in her lap. "I want to be very clear," she said, eyes flicking around the room, avoiding mine. "What I'm about to say stays in this family." Carol nodded immediately. Nate looked uncomfortable. Dad shifted his weight. I crossed my arms. "No." Grandma's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "You don't get to preface this with secrecy." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "You used bloodline as a weapon, and now bloodline doesn't say what you want it to say." Mom gasped softly. Dad's shoulders slumped. Grandma's face flushed. "How dare you?" she said. "After everything I've done—" "Stop," I said. The word landed hard. Grandma stared at me like I'd struck her. "No," I continued, voice shaking now, but loud enough. "You don't get to redirect this. Not tonight." Carol scoffed. "This is unnecessary. These tests are notoriously unreliable." I turned to her. "You didn't say that at Thanksgiving." Carol's mouth snapped shut. Grandma's hands trembled slightly. "This is private," she insisted. "Medical information. It means nothing." "It means everything," I said. "You threatened me over it." Mom stood suddenly. "Please," she said, voice breaking, "can we not turn this into a fight?" I looked at her, really looked at her. "When was it going to be a fight?" I asked quietly. "When she cut me out? When she told me I was worthless without kids, or only now that it affects her?" Mom's face crumpled. Grandma shot to her feet. "I did not say you were worthless," she snapped. "I said choices have consequences." "And now so do yours," I said. The room erupted. "You're being cruel," Carol said sharply. "She's confused," Dad murmured, not looking at anyone. Nate rubbed his face. "Can we just slow down?" Grandma pointed at me, finger shaking. "You think you're so righteous, so modern, but you have no idea what it was like back then." That was new. I blinked. "What?" Her voice cracked just a little. "You think life gave me options? You think I had choices?" The room quieted. Grandma inhaled sharply, like she hadn't meant to go there. "I married who I was told to marry," she said. "I stayed where I was told to stay. I kept this family together when men failed and children disappointed." Her eyes flicked to Dad, then away. "And yes," she said bitterly, "I worried about legacy, because legacy was the only thing that belonged to me." There it was, the truth, bleeding through the control. I felt something twist in my chest, pity, understanding, and anger that they could exist together. "And when this test came back," she whispered, voice shaking now, "it took that from me." Mom sobbed openly now. Grandma pressed a hand to her chest. "I built my life on something that might not even be real." I took a slow breath. "And instead of dealing with that," I said, "you tried to control me." She looked at me, eyes wet, furious. I was trying to hold on. "No," Sam said quietly, for the first time since we sat down. "You were trying to make her pay for your fear." Grandma whirled on him. "Stay out of this." He didn't flinch. "You don't get to terrorize someone and call it love." The word terrorize hit the room like a dropped plate. Grandma stared at him, then at me. "You've turned her against us," she said. I stood. "No," I said, voice steady. "You did that." She shook her head, backing away like I was the one betraying her. "I gave you everything." "You gave me conditions," I said, "and I lived under them for 30 years. My hands were shaking now, but I didn't stop. "You made my body a bargaining chip. You made love conditional. You made me choose between being myself and being acceptable." Grandma's mouth opened, but no words came out. "And now," I continued, "you're asking us to protect you from the truth, to lie so you don't have to feel what you made me feel." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Nate broke it, voice small. "Grandma, is it true?" She looked at him, and for the first time she looked old. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what's true anymore." That was it. The moment cracked open. Not triumph, not victory, just devastation. I exhaled slowly. I'm not going to expose you, I said. But I'm also not going to pretend this didn't happen. Her head snapped up. So what does that mean? It means, I said, no more threats, no more comments, no more control. And the will? Carol asked sharply. I turned to her. I don't want it. Grandma stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You don't mean that, she said. I do, I replied. If it comes with ownership, keep it. She swayed slightly, like the floor had shifted. You'd walk away? She asked. Yes, I said, and this time I won't come back just because you cry. Something in her face broke then. Not theatrically, not performatively, just a quiet collapse. I didn't mean to lose you, she said, barely audible. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. I know, I said, but you did. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She wasn't the villain of a story. She was a frightened woman who had used power as a substitute for love, and I was finally stepping out of its reach. Nothing ended cleanly after that night. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful group hug, no sudden wisdom delivered like a benediction. Families like ours didn't heal that way. They adjusted, they retracted, they pretended. The next morning, Grandma called me. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. I've been thinking, she said, about what I said, about how I said it. I waited. I shouldn't have threatened you, she continued. That was wrong. It was the closest thing to an apology she had ever given anyone. I accept that, I said. She hesitated. I've updated my will. I closed my eyes. You don't need to tell me that. I want you to know, she insisted. You're not disinherited. There it was, the retraction, the concession, the change of mind everyone had been waiting for. It didn't feel like relief. It felt late. I'm glad, I said carefully, but that doesn't fix everything, she sighed. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not sure you can, I replied. Not all of it. Silence stretched. Will you come by for Christmas? She asked finally. The question held hope and fear in equal measure. I don't know, I said honestly. Not like before. Her breath caught. I never wanted to push you away. I know, I said again. And I meant it. That was the cruelest part. Understanding didn't erase the damage. The DNA test never got talked about again, not openly. Another test was done. Another explanation was floated. A quiet agreement settled over the family like dust. This would become one of those stories no one told, but everyone felt. Mom stopped calling every day. When she did call, she avoided certain topics with surgical precision. Dad never brought it up. His silence hardened into something permanent. Nate apologized in a way that felt like he was apologizing for existing in a system he benefited from. I didn't know what to do, he told me one night. I still don't. That's okay, I said. I'm not asking you to fix it. Carol, predictably, iced me out. When we crossed paths, she smiled with her mouth and not her eyes. The family needed someone to blame, and I fit neatly. Thanksgiving came again the next year. Sam and I didn't go. We cooked a small meal in our own kitchen, turkey breast, roasted vegetables, a pie we bought from the store because neither of us felt like proving anything. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. After dinner, I checked my phone. A text from Grandma. Grandma. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're well. No demands, no commentary, just that. I stared at it for a long time. Sam watched me from across the table. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, just sad. He reached for my hand. That makes sense. I typed back a short reply. Me. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you are too. And that was it. I see Grandma now, occasionally. Lunches, short visits, neutral ground. She doesn't comment on my body anymore. She doesn't ask about babies. When Lily is around, Grandma's face still lights up, and I feel the familiar sting of comparison. But it's quieter now, less sharp. She's careful, that's the word. Careful like someone who's been burned and doesn't trust the fire anymore. We talk about the weather, the garden, the neighbor's dog. Once, she reached for my hand and said, I'm proud of you. It felt strange, unsteady, like a bridge made of rope. I'm proud of you too, I said, because it was easier than dissecting what that pride was built on. I don't know if she understands what she did. I don't know if she ever will. But I know this. I stopped letting her define my worth. I stopped translating her fear into my obligation. I accepted that love, in our family, often came tangled with control, and that untangling it meant losing something. Not money, not inheritance, but the illusion of unconditional belonging. And that loss still aches. Sometimes when I think about having children, I feel a shadow pass through the thought. Not dread, not anger, just grief for the version of family I hoped I'd have. But grief isn't a command. It doesn't get to tell me how to live, and neither does she. I learned that boundaries don't make you cruel. They make you honest. And honesty, even when it costs you closeness, is the only legacy worth passing down. She walked back the threat. She fixed the will. She pretended it never happened. But you don't threaten someone's existence and then ask for normal. I didn't lose the inheritance. I lost respect for a woman who confused control with love. Blood didn't bind us. Fear did. And the moment fear stopped working, I was finally free.